Hello, my lovelies! I'm Jenny O, the author with no last name, and I'm also a dev editor, fashion designer, and game developer, which means, well, I'm a visual artist who dabbles about or researches different art programs. It's really important when you're doing visual art to have the best tools available to you for your budget and your hardware capabilities. My script here is close to 6,100 words long. So that's 6,100. So this is going to be a long video. Strap in, grab your cocoa. Before we dive in, thank you, each and every one of you who has so far taken the Star Stable Strike Demand Survey. I do believe the percentages are beginning to even out, which is good. That doesn't mean I want you to stop telling your friends. The more people we have who take the survey, hopefully the more seriously Star Stable will take it. Link in the description below. It will be up for at least 2 more weeks. Probably around the 25th is when I'll close it. I will be going over the survey in a video or a couple of videos, because you guys have been using the last question as a vent box, and it's like way too good not to go over what you're saying. And my plan at the moment is to create some SSO player roadmaps based on the survey results. These will be pictures similar to the SSO roadmaps that we can post on Twitter and Tumblr and Instagram to put pressure on Star Stable during a strike that some of you are already doing, but to show them what it will take to get players to come back and spend server time and money on their game. Clear, actionable goals for Star Stable to meet. That is the plan. Today, I'm going to talk about Star Stable Entertainment's January blog post titled Marley's Farm Tech in Character Update. So, because this is more technical than usual, if you have any questions, please leave them in a comment and I'll do my best to explain in smaller words. The title of my video is Good, but Not Great. And if they want to be the #1 horse game on the internet, they can't remain at good. They have to become great. The usual disclaimers here. It is my opinion that Star Stable Entertainment wants to be taken seriously in the game development space. As such, when they release news, I'm going to treat them like any other game in the industry. This means SSE might not like what I have to say. What I'm going over today in today's video is not the game devs' faults. The game devs at SSE are not in charge of what programs corporate decides to buy licenses and use in the office. Please do not harass the game devs. If anything, I would like, as someone who has been beholden to old programs before, is to extend a hand in sympathy to the game developers working on SSO. And I hope, my lovelies, you can do the same once I finish explaining. The first good news is with these blog posts, we'll be able to start putting together more names to see who is on the team. This month is Oscar Carlson, who they are saying is the art director, and according to LinkedIn, is the lead 3D artist. Those are 2 different titles. So the art director comes up with the overall style of the entire game and is supposed to be making sure the visual art of all the artists meets the same standards and has the proper scaling, texture quality, and so on. He would be making a visual Bible of sorts for all the artists to follow. As the lead 3D artist in a traditional game studio, he'd be in charge of everyone who works on 3D models. Given SSO's loose team structure, I'm not sure how this works, but this could be a LinkedIn thing not having his actual title. The first 3 paragraphs are pretty much white noise. Every game company does their best within their technical limitations to try and give you a better gaming experience with minimal lag and enhance your experience. SSO has only been partially successful at this. The last sentence of the third paragraph is what is most important, with paragraphs 4 to 7. Oscar says, one big technical change in the engine that allowed us to deliver these improvements to you is gradient maps. Gradient maps allow us to create more variations of the same texture without adding more strain to your device. One of our artists created an image to show what difference it makes. Without gradient maps, we need to have 74 textures loaded into memory to achieve the amount of variation we have in Silverglade. But with gradient maps, we only need to load 15 textures and then create the colors within the engine itself instead of an external program like Photoshop. The gradient map is something we have been able to use while working with assets in the environment, but the development of the technique has room for improvement with potentially more use cases in the future. He explains this really well, actually. Go Oscar. I mean, use cases is jargon, and he means they can use it in the future to create even more variations on the models they've got. This is actually a major step in the right direction. This is good. This is good in the way that now Star Stable Online is doing gradient maps the way other games have been doing gradient maps since before 2004. Like, I have known intellectually what they were doing, and it has made me cringe because it's not efficient at all. But to have them confirm that they weren't actually doing standard industry practice is something else entirely. When SSO shows us a grayscale model of, say, a horse, the grayscale model is never going to be something you really see in the game. The grayscale is clay. It's digital clay. The grayscale model is for the artist to be able to see how the model would look in standard directional lighting, where are the highlights and the shadows going to fall. The grayscale represents the polygon mesh shell or skin. The polygon mesh is what everything else is applied to pretty much. It's a balloon, a clay balloon, an invisible clay balloon. So what Star Stable was doing was, after they had their 3D grayscale model, they were taking that grayscale and flattening it and giving it to the UV texture people. The UV texture folks would use that grayscale flat to digitally paint on fur textures, wood textures, and color and markings, and highlights and shadows. And when they were done, they would merge it all into one layer to apply to the 3D model again and put it into the game. This is why we cannot customize our horse quirts, or add custom markings, or change the color of the mane and tails, or their decorations like bows and flags, or the color of the gear, or the color of the clothes, because everything from the textures to the shading was, and for all the old models, is on one layer. This is also why color matching is next to impossible. Okay, I want you to imagine you have these two teams, and these teams are constantly rotating people as they come off and onto projects. You might do a race, and the next thing you're asked to do is work on a tech or clothing set. From the sounds of it, they aren't or weren't keeping track of the mid-tones hex colors. Mid-tones are your flat middle colors. Like, if you didn't have any highlights or shadows on anything, the mid-tone is what the object would be. If you aren't keeping a database or swatchbook of RGB hex colors for the red or blue or green you use most often in the game, the person who is working on the new tag, and if they want to make it and try to match it to another previous set, they have two choices. They either have to sample the UV texture image with something called the eyedropper tool and hope they get the right midtone, highlight, and shadow colors, or they have to do it by eye. Matching color by eye is both an innate biological ability and a learned skill. It depends on how well your eyeballs see minor variations of color and how long you've been trying to match colors. There are tests on the internet you can take to see how well your eyeballs differentiate color. add in the differences in monitor brightnesses and displays, and well, it's not as easy as you think. If you don't save your hex codes or make flat color swatches, this becomes a living hell. And you end up with what the colors in Star Stable clothing look right now. Nothing matches. So every piece of clothing in tech before they started using gradients was one layer. And every piece of clothing has their own texture layer that's colored and shaded. Every horse, every mane and tail style, and all these have to load up into your game. In clothes alone, there are 3,080 clothing items. There are 1,430 equipment items, 766 decorations, 210 accessories, and 300 hairstyles. Each of these has their own gradient UV texture map. That's 5,786 plus 429 horses, so that's 6,215 UV gradient maps plus horse hairstyles. I'm going to say that's probably close to 7,000 or more UV gradient maps just for the characters and horses alone. This doesn't include trees, flowers, grass, buildings. I do not know, for the life of me, why they chose to do this. In the beginning, when SSO was all pretty low quality textures and they only needed one texture per item to load in, it made sense. I mean, I get it. For something like the Star Stable seasonal games, this one UV texture layer thing made sense. Once they moved into an MMORPG, it stopped making sense. Okay. What every other game has done since before 2004 when World of Warcraft came out. So I mean EverQuest, and I have no idea if RuneScape was doing this, but I'm assuming RuneScape was doing this too, is they have multiple texture and gradient layers and a lighting system to bounce off of those layers. It's the same in games, it's in CGI animation and special effects, it's the same in digital painting or drawing. If you are doing something in the computer, whether or not you have a lighting system, you do things in layers. Game engines, sound programs, video editing, art programs, all God's children's programs got layers. Like parfaits. So your 3D model will work in either a grayscale or a tint of whatever the asset is supposed to be. Like Shrek, they did in mint green. Sully was a light blue, I think. This helps them create the asset mesh, which is made of polygons. It's like a flexible latex mask or a balloon. And the less polygons or vertices where the polygons meet, the easier and faster it is to load into your game. More later. They pass on this faux clay balloon to whoever is going to texture it. Now, there are like 3 different types of texture layers you can do. So you can do these 3D style stamps almost, like reptile scales, tree bark, velvet nap, cobblestones, fabric weave, knit weave, like low impact 3D imprints into the clay balloon here. This is impossible for SSO at the moment without a proper lighting system. Then you can add 2D style textures. This again can be wood textures and fabric textures or fabric patterns, relief veins. Generally, this is in grayscale again. You can see their 2D grayscale textures on this image they give us. And then you add color layers, or what they are calling the gradient layers. The gradient layer is going to give the textures all the different colors available for that texture. And then there might be like blackout layers. Blackout layers are going to be white markings, or like if they have an armor set and part of the armor set can change colors and the other part of the armor set can't, then you're going to need a layer for the stuff that doesn't change. And then in games with lighting systems that SSO really doesn't have, the model and all the layers are shipped off to the lighting people, and the lighting people are going to decide what the texture is supposed to be. How the light is going to bounce off of it. Is it wet? Is it leather? Is it matte? Is it velvet or fur nap? Does it have an undercolor layer where the sun hits it just right? Is it transparent? Lighting and visual effects is how games like WoW have those ghostly or water, etc. themed mounts. If you look at horse coats in Ostwin, done in Unreal, or Red Dead Redemption 2, done in Rockstar's engine, you're going to notice that the highlights and shadows and the way the light bounces off the coat of the fur is all done by the shape of the model, a low-impact 3D texture, and the way the sun is setting and what color it is. There is no painted-in shadow and highlight layers like they have in SSO. It's all textures and colors in lighting. SSO doesn't have a real lighting system except on the water in their core shadows, so their models look like plastic or clay because the highlights and shadows are literally painted on and can't move with the sun. Like, this is 2005 Guild Wars 1 level technology here, and Guild Wars 1 painted in their shadows on the ground and such. But even Guild Wars 1 was able to do metal reflections and color customization on your armor because they had those multiple layers. Metal started in factions in like 2006. They were doing minor improvements to their engine all 4 expansions, and then released Guild Wars 2 with a rebuilt engine in 2012. Unlike BDO, they haven't really announced if they've overhauled the engine since they started using it in 2007 or so. BDO released in 2014 and did a remaster in 2018, which I'm pretty sure they had an upgrade to Black Pearl, their engine. WoW overhauled their engine around 2015 when they did the graphics overhaul, and did another overhaul of the graphics in 2021. But they do it all at once. Get the pain over with. SSO cannot have a customization system for clothes or horses or anything until they go back and redo those 7,000 plus texture maps, which won't be 7,000 because of all the repeated styles of clothes in the game. And when they do, they can basically update all the old clothes without changing their designs to the art style they have now. This would be good. This would be excellent. Please do this. That, my lovelies, is going to be a shit ton of work. They probably need to assign a team to it. I don't know how long it would take if they want to optimize the game going forward and be a great game and not a good game. This is a project they need to tackle. And as incentive, if they do tackle this project and make it so I can customize my clothing and tag colors and, customize my black horses to have the markings or lack thereof I want, or even clipping, I would be doing a lot more grind and server time and buying more stuff and spending more Yorvik shillings. If they want me to buy more star coins, that's finish up your map in the Garnock story, and I'll consider it. The conclusion of this, outside of not implementing a lighting system, which I don't think they can do very well with their engine, is they are now at industry standard practices, which is good for them. And if they do go back and fix everything, yes, the game will run a lot smoother, and it might please be easier to match items colorized in the game going forward. Paragraphs 8 and 9 are noise too. I mean, it makes sense when they revamp something, they have to be aware of where people and stars and spiders and butterflies and so on and so forth were in order to either move those things as well or work around where they were in the map already. Once again, only partially successful at this. And I'm a bit worried Marley's character has devolved into potatoes. But, my grandfather really loved his potatoes too, but he did a lot of other things as well. Multifaceted, most of these characters are not. The next part of the blog post is written by Jane Skolman, who is an executive producer. She's someone in charge of all the games going at SE. That's 3, Star Stable Online, Wild Song, and Project Curie. So she's the one who makes sure things are completed on time, to budget, and smoothly as possible. She heads up all the other producers and game directors. She reports to Johan and all the stakeholders about how things are going. Marie Cecil Jacques would work under her doing the same thing, either expressly for the character, horse, and gear updates, or for the entire SSO game itself, since it's not stated which producer she actually is. In the film industry, the executive producer usually has a financial stake in the production as well, as they are one of the financiers. So Jane opens up with telling us how they have upgraded their programming language to the latest version. Good. They have changed from 32-bit support to 64-bit support. This is virtually meaningless for most people. My computers have been 64-bit since 2006, so I mean, this is good. Let's get up to industry standard here. All 64-bit really does is make it so your computer can fetch data faster from RAM. It's not going to change how SSO runs at all unless SSO fixes their coding and apparently textures and other graphic issues. Still good. They have ported their, I'm assuming, code editor to an application engine tool called Qt. If you've never heard of Qt, I don't really expect you to have heard of it. They're calling it more modern, and since I don't know what their current engine code stack overflow looks like, or if they're doing coding in text files, I'm going to have to take their word for it. So what is Qt? Qt is a coding forms creator tool application. What this means is Qt is a program that lets people create graphically things like surveys and calendar tools, clock in and clock out programs, and make things like checkboxes, drop-down boxes, and radio buttons. And we'll basically compile it and export those things in C++ or Python, which are both coding languages. There appears to be some abilities to do 3D modeling style work or create mathematical progression random maps in it. If you are using Maya or an engine even like Blender where you can build your map in it, those aspects of Qt are not necessary. Like maybe you can do some lighting programming with it. The advantage I can see to Qt is it is going to allow SSO to create what are called code libraries. This is going into how games are created in the modern space. If you use Unreal or Unity, or as far as I know, any modern engine, they have tools built into them where you can keep and create libraries. Code variables, textures, lighting settings, sounds, animations. Everything has layers and everything has libraries. Libraries being, a list of all your codes, of blocks and blocks and blocks of all your textures in one place. Assets all lined up in a row, just like a real library. And to make coding more visual, they have created these interfaces which put these things from the library into little color-coded bubbles, and you can connect these little color-coded bubbles together in sequences to create the base code of the game and hit play and watch it work in real time. Fun. A code variable is basically if X, do Y. If not X, do Z. So let's say I want to jump a fence in Star Stable. X would be me hitting the spacebar at the right time. So if I hit space within the programmed area of where it's the right spot to jump the fence, then I do Y. I jump the fence. But if I don't hit space in that time, I will do Z, hit the fence. Now, when you hit the fence in Star Stable, the screen flashes red and there's the thunking sound and you bounce back. Those are all programmed outcomes of not making the X variable. In a modern program, the X would be one bubble. If you make X, then the Y bubble is the result of the animation of you jumping the fence. But if you don't make X, then the Z bubble is you hitting the fence, with additional bubbles for the flashing screen and the sound effect. And you literally string these bubbles together by clicking and dragging lines between them, and it ends up looking like that one scene in Wreck-It Ralph where Turbo messes with the game code. Props to Disney on that one. If you are a visual person, this is so much easier to see than a long stream of code on the screen. And because you have this library of code, if you need to do this again for something else, like a rock, then you have that code available in the library to put in that bubble with the rock being the new X. Now, Qt's interface looks like standard Windows graphics from 1995. Okay, it's, yes, more modern than working in Notepad, but it's not nearly as fancy or pretty as Unreal 4's node system from 2014, or Unity's node system. Basically, to create something similar to what Unreal or Unity have in their node systems, SSS coders will have to use drop-down boxes to access code variables from the library. If they want to make it pretty colors or make it dark, they will probably have to create their own custom style sheets like we're back in LiveJournal circa 2003. Looking at Qt, it is not visually intuitive. It's not going to let them create animation or texture or model libraries. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they can do a texture library. Given how disorganized their code is, as they add new code, are breaking even stuff put in less than 6 months ago, I want to say without an entire engine changeover, using Qt is a step in the right direction. I'm tentatively going to say that Qt might be the only third-party program they can get to work with their game engine due to its age and Qt's relative simplicity. Their programming language is a basic programming language most, if not all, platforms can read. C++ is industry standard. The Qt library will just help them be able to adapt it to Apple and Android devices and could possibly let them do a console release too, just like Unreal or Unity would. Now, I don't think adapting SSO to mobile is a good idea. My sources tell me it's not a great experience. If they wanted a mobile game, they really should focus more on Wildsong and give it more than, 30 quests. I mean, Wildsong looks like a more cartoony SSO anyways. Just my opinion. I hope that makes sense. I know this is confusing if you aren't into game tech. Jane continues to tell us about Simplygon and how their gradient and water shader improvements. Okay, please, for the love of God, stop messing with the water and fix the rest of the game. The water is the least of your problems. Maybe the water helped you figure out something else, but stop. Stop fussing. Jane says Simplygon is also crucial for the performance of the game, minimizing lag and game crashes due to player devices running out of memory. In fact, optimization of memory is something we always have an extra eye on and continue to improve, since this is one of the main reasons why the game sometimes crashes for you. This is the end result of what Simplygon does. It is not technically what the program is doing. And this is actually why they do need to implement separate texture and color layers in order to use Simplygon and improve the character model. In layman's terms, short terms, what Simplygon does is it helps them create a chain of models to load into the game and make it so the game doesn't lag. The model that's the furthest out you can see will be an extremely simple model. Like if it's a house, it will be a square box with a roof, as few vertices as possible in that clay balloon, with a very low level texture map over it. As you get closer, the model is programmed to change out to something more complicated with better textures until you're right up next to it and it's the best model the engine can handle. You, the player, are not supposed to see this happening. If you are seeing textures change, like rock textures, and have little dog houses and cars pop in while you get close, it means this chain of models hasn't been completed or the distance is just wrong. And there is a lot of this right now in Star Stable. When Star Stable opened, remember, they had this low-level type of graphics where they only needed this one set of textures. Then they decided they wanted to upgrade their graphics level to a higher and more modern standard, which is fine. It means on the optimization side of things, especially for assets and textures, start getting more complicated with things loading into the game. And yes, it will take up RAM and back and forth to the server data talking and high internet and CPU usage, and you get either things popping in out of thin air when you get close, or the game crashing. This is not your fault. It is their fault for not optimizing the game, and Simplygon is a program that's going to streamline this process of removing polygons in their vertices from the little clay balloons of every asset in order to make this chain of simple to complicated. I'm sure it does other wonderful things too. It's a well-allotted program many big companies use. This is good. It won't be great until everything in the game has this changeover and the code and the assets and the textures are all optimized to remove redundancy and minimize the amount of texture files, etc. Honestly, this is a stitch in time saves 9 type of situation. If they did it back when they were making the new graphics and doing the new map openings, they wouldn't have so much work to do all at once. Now, Jane goes on to say they are adding more game databases to Europe. All your information is stored in a database. Character name, star coins, Jarvik shillings, your skin tone, face shape, makeup, hair, all the items you own, the quests, achievements, collectibles, and reputation you've done, all in the database. The bigger the database, the longer it takes to find information. More of them means it will go faster. This is good. Once again, I can't agree with SSO going to mobile. I think this is a disaster waiting to happen, especially with a kids game and the stuff linked to credit cards, and the fact mobile doesn't have a lifetime option like the PC version, and there's no refunds. And then she says, in order to handle all these new game databases, we also rewrote and modernized some of the back-end services related to your character. When these back-end services were released, we had, and are still, experiencing some hiccups, and a lot of you experienced the weird message to create a character when you already had one. We are super sorry for this. We didn't mean to scare or annoy you. The team is working incredibly hard and in shifts in order to fix this hiccup. The majority of the issues are gone, and we will of course continue to work on it until it is solved completely. And this is where my jaw hits the floor. Folks, this means they are working on our player character and stuff in the live game. Once again, they aren't doing this in a test server. This is so highly irresponsible. I have very few words. I can't believe this. I can't even believe they are essentially confirming this. There is so much data attached to these database servers that to try to modernize them in the live game, I mean, I have reports of horses gone missing, item inventory was gone missing, and now they are confirming that this whole create a new character bug was because they're working on the main character in the game and working on the database, modernizing the database for that main character in the live game. This is going against just Game Dev 101. Don't fuck with your database in the live game. My god. Star Stable Entertainment actually owns their own servers. There aren't as many of them as you think there are. If your Wikipedia is correct, they have 105 servers, 16 in America and 18 in Germany, and the rest are kind of spread out in ones and twos and handfuls across the rest of the world. With about 150,000 active players in a week, that means I don't think any of these servers have more than a 2,000 player limit. You try to get 50 players on a screen in SSO, it starts to lag, and people are freezing, and popping in and out, and gliding along the ground. Sometimes it only takes 10 or 20 on the screen at a time for lag. New World has a max server limit of 2,000 people, and they were trying in their modern game with a modern engine, though poorly coded, so they are having SSO problems on steroids, to have 100 players on screen at a time doing battles. Ashes of Creation is trying to get up to 100 to 200 players at a time on the screen during battles as well, and they are using Unreal 5. We know, because we play the game, there are almost dead servers. Right now, buying a new server might be out of the question because there is a copper shortage and server part shortage, basically. Final Fantasy XIV had to stop taking new players because their servers are full. WoW lost 3 million players over their awfulness, and many of them went to Final Fantasy XIV. Square Enix cannot get servers. I don't think SSO is going to be able to. Mortal Online 2 just launched and tried to have one server for 110,000 people and could only manage to host 3,000 people at a time. And their map is much, much bigger than SSO's. There's a finite limit to the number of people who can be online in the game at the same time. If SSO servers limit is 2,000, I'd be surprised. Like, that seems to be a modern load, but map size makes me think maybe 500 to 1,000 at a time, maybe? What SSO could do is take two of those almost dead servers and merge them so they have a free server to work on the player character and fix the coding and test the coding and update the databases before they launch it into the live game. This would also fix some of the optimization issues and our people scraping files for spoilers, and we might not have issues like something released early in America, which then breaks the entire horse buying system. Server mergers on older games are pretty much a fact of life. Once the servers are merged, you'd actually have a more thriving game community. You wouldn't lose your friends unless they decided to scatter people across servers, and they could honestly go by club groups. And I hope, given how many bugs that are bugs about losing horses inventory and now even make a new character, SSO will consider making a beta server to build the game in. Please, please stop fussing with the player database in the live game. Oh my god, disasters have already happened. Now, the next bit of the article is about the player character update. Due to the technical limitations they are working under, and the things I've gone over in this video, and honestly there is really no information in that section from Marie Cicel, I do not want to feed into any hype about the character update. There are things you guys, as players, want their engine simply cannot do. I'm sorry. They can't support sliders like modern games. If they want sliders, they're going to have to move to a modern engine. I don't want to feed the hype. When we've got something more concrete, I'll go over it. If SSO wants to be a great game and not a good game, which they are a mediocre game right now, they are going to have to eventually break down, stop applying band-aids to their tech, and remaster the entire game engine in code and apparently all the assets from scratch and implement a lot more actual game mechanics to their core game loop. Or else, they're going to be basically out-teched out of the game market entirely. I'm not talking adventure games or horse games. I'm talking about the entire game market. These are good steps, which are probably very limited cost in the right direction. If they create a texture and pattern and gradient library for their assets, it will be a lot easier to, well, color correct stuff and rebuild the game in a new third-party engine, or in a restructured version of their proprietary engine, which if they merge some servers, they could work on the game as it is in one and remaster in another as they get the code and texture and asset libraries figured out. Right now, SSO is relying on you guys not knowing anything about game development. They want you to believe they are making great strides in improving things. They are making small, good baby steps in the right direction. They are by no means making a modern game. And given what at least one of their game devs has said on their social media, I'm not sure how many of them know what a core game loop is. That is on my list of videos to make, but I'll be using Sly Cooper as an example because that game has one of the best core game loops I've ever played. So, for these upcoming SSO blog posts, I will be making videos about them. If you care about game dev, or are a hardcore player and want to know these things, or you want to hold SSO to a standard, educate yourselves. There are tons of free resources on YouTube. Even watching the Unreal 5 demo is so enlightening on seeing how modern game development and movie CGI stuff happens. Watch those behind the scenes stuff in your animated movies, or about pre-visualization in the MCU, or the behind the scenes Star Wars stuff on Disney+. Those documentary programs are created for people who don't know a lot to learn about it. Take advantage of it so you know what is going on and you can learn what search terms you need to know in order to look things up when game companies like SSO try to go, hey, we're doing this and it's great, when it might not be great. It might be good. I hope I explained everything in an understandable way. I try to explain it so if you don't know anything about game dev, you'll have some idea of what's going on. I know I have game dev people who watch my videos. You can go more in depth in the comments if you like. Thank you for the info in advance if you do. If you're still confused, please ask questions. I'll try to explain more. Next month, they want to do a blog post about their Quest development, and that's going to be interesting. Thanks for listening, my lovelies. Bless, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.